Hi, I'm Tiffany.
And I'm Freddy.
Welcome back to our podcast, Love, Growth, and Narratives. This is our 6th episode. We are so appreciative of all of you who have been following us. You've subscribed, you've hit like, some of you have commented. We appreciate you and sharing our podcast. I've come across friends who are, saying, hey, I'm on podcast number 3 or I'm on episode 6 and so forth. And I really appreciate that so much. Please continue to hit those buttons, the like, follow, subscribe,
and rate.
Yeah. As well as leave comments and suggestions. We've gotten a few here and there. People do it sometimes off the podcast, but we appreciate if you put it in there. And towards the end of this podcast, I'll give you some suggestions that could help us with next week's podcast. But today's podcast will be around growth. And our topic will be anxiety. So Freddie and I will be talking about how we have anxiety and how we're growing through it. To begin, we wanted to make sure that we were working off of a specific definition that everybody could think about as we move forward in this podcast. And I'm just using a definition given by the Mayo Clinic. And it says anxiety, intense, excessive, and persistent worry and fear about everyday situations. Some of those symptoms, the way it can show up is a fast heart rate, rapid breathing, sweating, and feeling tired may occur.
Yeah, and I've been someone who's battled anxiety, my entire life. I mean, there's countless times where anxiety has messed with me. One of the ones that come to mind, honestly, is my Sunday night anxiety. I've had Sunday night anxiety for probably 20 years at least, if not longer, where every Sunday night as I prepare for bed, not only do I think about what's going to happen Monday and throughout the rest of the week, but I really go through my mind of whatever I didn't get accomplished the previous week, and I tack it on to what I have to do that week. And that just brings all of this rush of how am I going to get all this stuff done? And it's extremely frustrating. You got any cases where you've really suffered?
Well, honestly, I don't think I knew or recognized that I had anxiety until maybe 6-7 years ago. Before that, I thought of anxiety as something other people had, that it was something, that it was kind of a real negative thing that people had wrong with them. They couldn't control themselves in some way. Until some years ago, I started having heart palpitations, and I would talk to the doctor about it. And there wasn't anything that they saw wrong with my heart necessarily. But when I started talking to a friend about it, she mentioned that that's one of the symptoms of anxiety. And I started to look into what anxiety was more and how it shows up and some of the things we do that feed anxiety. And then I realized that I'd probably been suffering from anxiety my whole life. I think I thrived on it, and it made me do certain things, made me get things done. It helped me get through college and all that. And
yes,
it helps get through a lot of things. But I would say in my later years, my anxiety is changing where it's kind of taking over my life, where I'm feeling anxious about everything.
Yes.
Feeling anxious about the state of the world, the crime that's happening. I'm more anxious around, racism, where I feel like before it happened and it was no big deal. But now it's like I find myself still thinking about the comment after it happened.
So let me ask you this. Do you feel that before your anxiety was about things that you had control over, and so that kind of helped the situation, whereas now a lot of your anxiety is over things that you have less control over?
I think so. I think you hit it right there, because that's what it's feeling like in this time in my life. Like now I'm having anxiety around my mom and being a caregiver. I'm having anxiety about this relationship. Like now this is another person that I worry about, a stepson and the dog, myself. I'm having anxiety that I'm not taking care of myself.
Yeah.
There's just, it's really impacting me, and I'm having to first accept that I have it, and then second, find ways to grow through it. One of the ways is with a therapist has been one of the ways that I'm doing it. I do find that exercising helps, but not in a way that exercise takes over my life like I let it happen before when I went through my weight loss journey. Like, because I'm a very extreme person, and when I do something, I do it 1,000%, which means other things fall off. And that's what happened during my bout with exercise, to the point of anxiety, where it's like, was it enough? Was it long enough? Was it hard enough? Do I have the best trainer, the best shoes, the best, all of these different things? I don't want to go there again. So now it's like, I'm trying to accept that there are many different ways that are effective to get to the same goal. Like, I don't have to go 1,000 to lose weight. I can just, do it for 30, 40 minutes with a friend at home. I don't have to, everything doesn't have to be on such a high level, which is a form of me releasing control.
Yeah. But I think that one of the things you may want to talk about even more is where you were talking about the benefits of anxiety. Because I've actually found, especially earlier in my career, I found benefits to anxiety. Like if I had, like when I was in government and I would have a high level meeting, I'd be really anxious, especially if I didn't know the people that were in the meeting. But what that forced me to do was just prepare like crazy and research and, just make sure I knew all of what I was going to say and just really game out the conversation in the whole 9 yards. And so I felt that when the meeting would actually happen, I felt prepared. When I was in telecommunications, especially when I was on the maintenance side, I would worry about troubles coming up that I didn't know how to solve. And that forced me to dig into the manuals and go up into our lab and try different things to see what would happen. And so there was a value to anxiety because it pushed me to prepare, which is good. But then you have the anxiety where you don't really control the outcome, but it's the same weight on you emotionally. You want to talk more about that difference?
I do. I think, like I mentioned earlier, getting through college with, I think I had 3 or 4 part-time jobs, and I was going to school full-time at night. That anxiety about all of those things got me through. I wanted to finish so badly that I went to every junior college that offered whatever class I had. So I went to several all over the place. I just wanted to be done. I just wanted to get through it. And the anxiety of, having to work and going at night and all of that, I didn't want to prolong it. I didn't want to stretch it out. And it helped me get through. It helped me study. It helped me, it worked for me during that time. I had control over that though, right? But anxiety about things like the crime that's happening out there, am I going to be a part of it? Am I going to see it? I can't control that. I have no idea. In my mind, I think being anxious about it makes me more aware, and it probably does. I probably do see things that other people don't see and notice, but the impact physically, what it's doing to me medically, right? Blood pressure shooting up and these other things, that's not benefiting me. So I need to understand that, yes, I need to be aware of my surroundings, but thinking about it 24/7, even when I'm safe,
right,
is not helping. It's actually hurting me in other ways. And so
have you found that there have been times when that anxiety has kept you from enjoying where you were?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, I've been at people's homes where this was just recent. I was at a friend's house who has a sunroom, and the sunroom has a lot of windows all around it. And she has a beautiful backyard, but all I could picture was some masked person jumping over the bushes, coming in and attacking us. It was really hard for me to relax. I kept looking at every sound that I heard, or I heard a helicopter flying over us. I'm like, oh, is that for here? And then I'm asking her, is this neighborhood safe? Have you had break-ins? And it has definitely kept me from enjoying things. I have a lot of anxiety about going out somewhere, where I'm going to go, when I park, when I get there, when I leave, on the freeway, people are shooting at people. I mean, you would think, if you were in my mind, you would think we were in the middle of, I don't know, World War. Yeah, exactly. But there's no but. I'm trying to move away from that because it's exhausting me, and it's keeping me from being able to do other things I want to do in my life, because I'm physically and mentally exhausted from worrying about things I can't do absolutely anything about.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I do is try to do gratitude. That helps. But my therapist mentioned you need to ground yourself, right? And you always say, be where your feet are, right? So one of the exercises that he tells me to do is it's a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I could be messing it up a little bit, but what you do is you think of not imagine, what are 5 things that you see, right? What are 4 things that you hear? 3 things that you maybe feel, 2 that you touch, 1 that you taste, right? And the numbers are correlated because you're not always tasting something, but it really does help bring me back to where I'm at in the moment, right? Especially if you're outside. I love to do it outside. I feel like there's more to see and hear and all those type of things, right? I think that's really powerful.
Yeah.
It does help me in the moment to relax and just not worry about everything, which worry it's not helpful to be worrying about everything that's going on. I mean, we could do that all day long and never have an ending to it. And I tend to find things to worry about. Like once something is done and it went well and it's over, and I'm like, okay, the next thing, now I'm worried about this. Now I'm worried about that. Like with my mom, I'm constantly worried. And I told myself when she went back home from staying with us, there's cameras at her house. I told myself I'm not going to be looking at those cameras all night. I can't. Right. And even though they're still giving me alerts, the sound is not there, but the vibration is. Before I could hear the vibration and feel it in my sleep, right? But now that I've told myself I'm not going to allow that to control my whole night, I don't hear it. I'm not looking for it. And so, of course, I don't want anything to happen. And if something does, I want to be able to help. But if I'm not sleeping, I'm a mess.
Yeah.
And because there's been so much in these last 6 months of this year, so much going on with everyone, I absolutely have to do something about this anxiety. I cannot thrive on it because I'm going to fall apart, and I can't afford to do that, because I'm like, a lot of people need me. And of course I need myself, and I need to do things for myself, but I kind of do thrive on people needing me. But I realize that I still need to take care of myself. And so I'm having to control that anxiety. Even when I feel it, I have to just say, okay, you feel anxious about this, but so what?
But that brings up also another subject that has to do with people who always have anxiety. Is that the mind just continues to move towards comfort. And if you're a person who has always had anxiety, your mind wants to keep you in an anxious state. And so like when you had talked about earlier, when it's like you're always going from one anxious subject to another, that's part of what makes it difficult to fix the problem. Because even though you know that there's something that you're just worried that you can't really control, because your mind has been used to being anxious. There's almost a certain comfort to it. And so trying to move away from that is difficult. What I've found, for me, I used to get anxiety when it came down to uncomfortable conversations. If I had to have an uncomfortable conversation, even when I was in government, when I was in leadership, when I would have to have an uncomfortable conversation with someone on my team, if I had to tell them that what they were doing wasn't enough, I would have extreme anxiety about it. when talking to my kids, a lot of times, like just a few years ago, when you highlighted some things to me that I wasn't doing with Joseph. And it's like, okay, I haven't been doing this for at least a few years to hold Joseph accountable for his schoolwork. And now to just out of nowhere start doing that, that gave me extreme anxiety, even though I knew I needed to do it. I absolutely had to do it. But just the level of anxiety of sitting in front of my son and saying, yeah, I know I let you get away with this for this long, but I didn't realize what I was doing. And now I need to right the ship, as it were.
What was making you anxious about that? Like, what were you worried would happen in those conversations?
I think I was really worried about, and maybe I was just thinking of myself at that age. It was like, well, you let me do it all this time. Why are you trying to, and just the resentment that would come from him in terms of now you want to, clamp down on this. And that did bring me, it shouldn't, but it did.
Yeah.
It brought me extreme anxiety, but I knew that I had to do it. And because of that, and because of a lot of your coaching, I can have, more productive conversations with my son without all the anxiety that would normally precede that conversation. And so it was just a situation of realizing, okay, I'm going to have to do this. Whether I'm anxious or not, it needs to get done. I have to do it. And when I talk about anxiety, this is not something that I can feel like I've conquered, because I haven't. I feel like I've grown a lot, but I definitely haven't conquered it. I still have my Sunday night anxiety. It's not nearly as bad as it used to be. Especially like when I was in government, it used to be really bad. I didn't know how I was going to get to sleep on Sunday nights. And, but now I have found ways of just clearing it out of my mind. And one of the things that my therapist used to tell me was, whenever you have, especially in the middle of the night, whenever you have anxiety, write it down. Because oftentimes it would be something that, oh man, I forgot to do this yesterday. I'm going to have to do this in the morning, but I'm afraid I'm going to forget it, or whatever the case may be. Whatever my thoughts are, what I first started doing when she told me that was I would break out my iPad and just start typing. By the way, I don't write anything, folks, because I can't read my own handwriting, because it's horrible, but that's a whole nother subject. So I would jump on my iPad and type out my thoughts. And it was unreal how that would take so much weight off of me. I hadn't solved anything. I hadn't fixed anything, but just the fact that I got it out there was extremely helpful. Have you had any situations like that?
Actually, as you're talking, writing things down in a different way, but than what you're describing. But I, in the past, have been a person who can keep a lot in my head. I mean, like, I knew all my students' scores. I could tell you how many sight words they knew. I could tell you who didn't know what sight word. I mean, I knew them and all of that stuff back and forth. And now I don't. Like, my memory is not as good, like with menopause and everything happening, and just having more on my plate. And writing it down makes me feel less anxious about it, because at first I was still trying to remember. I was beating myself up about not knowing it. And I just said, you got to write it down. So what? And so I think I release some anxiety by trusting myself that there's another way to do this, and that other way isn't wrong. Because I was so prideful that I could remember everything about everybody. And then I thought me not being able to do that anymore was a dig on my personality, or dig on me in some kind of way, which caused me anxiety. But just being more accepting of myself and things, that lowers my anxiety. Writing out a list of things that I need to do I have to physically see it on paper, like putting it in my phone or using all these fancy apps doesn't work the same for me as me physically writing it out.
Yeah.
That lowers my anxiety. Having a clear workspace lowers my anxiety because at first I had organized chaos, which I still have a bit of that and I probably always will. But I do notice that less clutter, less things lowers my anxiety. But cleaning gives me anxiety. So I don't know how to deal with this sometimes. But I find that tackling something new gives me anxiety. It takes me longer to learn things and I get anxious around that feeling.
Yeah.
I still learn it. I don't even know why I put myself through that. Once it's done, I'm like, why in the world did I? Yeah. But that's what happens.
Yeah.
And so now I give myself longer to do things than I did before. Because when we go back to the good anxiety, waiting to the last minute to do something, it helped me be more creative. Like it helped it stay in my mind better.
Yeah.
But as I'm aging and things are changing, that's not working for me anymore. So I had to grow in that, like, you know what? You do need to do things ahead of time. Different from other people who do everything ahead of time because they just want to be done.
Right.
Check things off their list. For me, it's like give myself time to do that one thing. So I don't feel like I'm rushing. I give myself more time to understand it and learn it. And it just lowers my anxiety. I'm not even sure if I answered your question. I probably...
No, you did. You did. And you know, with a lot of the things that I deal with anxiety has to do with, I used to be a huge procrastinator. Not that I don't now, but I'm not nearly as bad as I used to be. And so what would happen is the list of things that I hadn't accomplished would just beat me to death. And because I'm so good at mentally beating myself up over anything I don't do or haven't done well, it got to a point where I was going down this rabbit hole of just beating up on myself. And so what I had to start doing was saying, okay, well, I'm going to get some things done. And I know people that make lists, and I always used to think that was silly. But now I'm loving it because when I make a list of things that I need to do throughout the day and being able to sit there and check those things off really relieves anxiety, because for me, I remember the things I didn't do and I don't remember the things I did, but I remember the things I didn't do. So I don't give myself the credit for having done a whole bunch of things. I just focus intently on the things that I didn't do. And that's another one of the ways that I really have to fix things. And that will eventually help a lot of my anxiety.
Yeah. I feel that medically, honestly, like gummies, they help relax me.
Yeah.
A specific one that it doesn't make you high or anything, but it just takes that edge off so I can relax and not feel like the world is crumbling into I need to catch all the crumbs. Because that's really my mindset. I gotta catch up. If there's something going on, I need to catch it. I mean, literally, I'm driving down the street almost looking for, I was just telling you this the other day. If I'm driving down the street and I see someone who looks to me sketch in some kind of way, and another person is walking towards them, it's a woman, it's a child, it's a vulnerable person, I will watch until they pass, because I feel like if something happens, I gotta call, I gotta honk, I gotta whatever. And I've done that before where I've intervened, not directly, but in some kind of way I do help to the situation. And I almost feel like that's my job. And I almost feel that way in my personal life, as a daughter, as a fiance, as a teacher, as a friend, but I'm realizing more and more I have to pull back on some of those things, because one, if you do everything for other people, they don't do it for themselves. And two, I'm so busy doing everything for everybody else, I'm not doing anything for myself. So, and
some of these circumstances where you wanted to help people would have put you in greater danger. And
yeah.
I would be against that.
Yes. But I feel like I have to. It's my job. And I'm not sure where that I think I am sure where it came from, but not going to talk about that today. But Yeah, and just growing through this, accepting that this is a new phase, new part of my life, or it has always been there, but it's getting, more prominent, that I'm trying to get control of it, for lack of a better word. Because I don't want it to impact my health. And it already kind of is, right? It's impacting it. And so I'm really working on trying not to be, while not beating myself up, like I have anxiety around the wedding, right? And there's some of it's bad anxiety and some of it's good. Like, I'm anxious about how things are going to look and how they're going to go, and if I'm going to have a good time and if other people are going to have a good time. And that's a part of it, I think. And I know that that's a temporary thing. Like once it's done, it's done.
Right.
So I'm okay with that, I think.
Except, will your mind just move to the next issue of anxiety?
Probably, like being married.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I've seen with you.
Yeah,
is that there's not a point where you're not anxious. It's like, okay, we solved this one problem, next, and it's like you don't give yourself a chance to, just exhale.
Yeah, not enough enjoying, and which is why I read something or saw something. I think I might mention this before on another podcast, but glimmers, looking for little, little things that bring you joy. I don't think I know that I've been afraid to be too happy and relaxed because something's going to come up and destroy it. So instead I stay in that space where I'm ready for it, or I try to be ready for it. And I know that that's not good and it's not healthy, and I could be missing some things doing that.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I've really, really tried to figure out is joy. It's from one of my many Brene Brown books that I've read, where she talks about joy, and it's hard to have true joy when you have anxiety and you're constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop, and you're just saying, okay, this happiness is a temporary thing, and it's almost, you're almost looking forward to the next bad thing to happen, which is something that also has to do with your mind moving towards what it's used to, towards comfort, and that anxiety being what your mind has been, what you've trained your mind to be used to. And so getting out of that, trying to be joyous, is one of the things that I've been trying to concentrate on, especially when I'm in circumstances where everything is good, and just going through my mind and saying, hey, everything is good. And one of the things that's helped me with that anxiety, and something that gets on your nerves, is my constant gratitude, and gratitude for you and gratitude for others. It does help lower my anxiety, because I feel like I have such an awesome support system that I can get these things done, and I have people with me to help me along this route. And so it does actually bring my anxiety down. And so sometimes when I do feel anxious, I go through, and who's ever around me at the time, which is most of the time you, is going to get some gratitude from me, because not just because I want that person to know that I am actually grateful for them, but I'm talking to myself here. Look at all these wonderful people around me. Look at all these people who are in my corner. Look at, I have a woman who took care of me through 4 surgeries in less than 3 years. And just keeping that in my mind, that, yes, there are things I need to work with my son, but my son's a good kid, and having to give him that credit that my son's a good kid. And so, yes, there are things that I need to help him work on, but he's got a good foundation, and that makes me feel good. And that brings down the anxiety a bit, even though I still have things to work on with him.
I'm going to jump in here for a minute to the listeners, when Freddie said it gets on my nerves, let me clarify, because you were like, why would it get on your nerves if someone's grateful? No, Freddie will tell me all day long, every day, and I'm talking about several times a day, you're so wonderful, you're so amazing. And I'll be like doing nothing. I don't even know why he's saying it. And so it may appear like it's getting on my nerves, but it's more like, what are you saying this? Are you just saying it out of habit, or is there something very specific? But that's also a growth move for me, having somebody tell me how good they think I am or the benefit of me, because I'm not used to that. Okay. I'm not used to hearing that a lot. Okay. I'm used to hearing more problems. So, that's an area for growth of me. But, also, yes, Freddie does, if we're having people over or we're somewhere, he has to stop and tell everybody in the room how amazing they are every time. And, it's like, oh, here it comes, but no, I think that that's amazing trait. I wouldn't want to change that about you.
But it's not for no reason.
Right.
And
it feels like, because I'm like, I just walked in the room. That's all I did.
and sometimes we're having a discussion,
mm-hmm.
and the fact that the discussion has been so impactful that we're both being able to share our ideas and opinions without beating up on each other and really resolving things. And so sometimes at the end of that, I sit and think, and I was like, wow, this woman is wonderful. And I love our relationship. And so it's not for no reason. It seems that way. But sometimes the things that seem like, sometimes where it seems like nothing is happening, that in and of itself is something for me to be grateful about. So.
But you know what's interesting too? I'm glad you brought that up, is that sometimes hearing how great I am gives me anxiety, because my problem is I think I have to be great.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So for the listeners, there was a moment I was just so stressed out, right? Everything going on with my mom. I don't know. I don't even remember why I was just stressed and I think crying or whatever. And Freddie had some years ago, he had, a couple of my friends make a video to me telling me how great I was as a birthday thank you or something. And he had me watch the video to help remind me like how good I am and what people felt about me. But it actually had the opposite effect and made me cry, because I thought, oh my God, I can't let anybody down. I have to keep up this greatness. And because what people were saying was very powerful and I appreciate it, but it also made me feel like I have to keep it up. I can't let anyone down, which is how I'm always feeling all the time. So I have to be able to, that's an area of growth, be able to hear someone praise me and not feel like that's my job to keep that title or make them feel that way all the time.
Yes.
But it gives me anxiety when I hear that, right? Like when I hear people like, well, if I say no to a committee at school, it's kind of a shock. Like, what? People are used to me saying yes. So now I have anxiety that they're going to think I'm a slacker.
Right.
And I shouldn't. Like, I know I'm not a slacker and they know I'm not a slacker.
Right.
Why do I feel that way? Because I feel like I have to keep up this certain level of doing things.
Yes.
And I have anxiety around it. I have anxiety trying to keep that level, and I have anxiety of letting it go.
Yeah.
But I have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yes.
And that's going to lower my anxiety. It gives me temporary anxiety, but it's going to lower it after a while, where I just begin to be like, I'm not just saying no to be mean and be a person who's unhelpful, but I just can't right now. And I'll help people when I can. And when I can't, it's not because I don't care about them or I'm a bad person. It's just because my capacity is just filled at that moment.
Yeah. I mean, it really makes me think about also in relationships, because in romantic relationships, I have a habit of becoming neurotic and agreeable. And what that turns into is anxiety for me, because I'll say yes to something I really don't want to do. And then, sometimes it could be not something simple. It could be like a long trip,
Mm-hmm.
and something I really don't want to do. And just the anxiety of, okay, but I really don't want to do this, but I don't want to let this person down. And as I've gotten older, and I don't know if it's just a product of me getting older, but I've gotten better at saying, yeah, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I'm not interested. But
You're still working on that, though.
I am still working on
I'll
that.
see a look in your face, or your body language will tell me you're saying yes, but that's not really what you want.
Yeah.
And so then I have to say, look, I'll have to say, you're not doing this for me. And then you'll say, yes, I am. I want my woman to be happy. And then, go through that.
I want my woman to be happy.
But I'm like, look, this is not going to break me. This is for you. Like what you're going to wear in the wedding, right? Yes, I want him to wear something specific that he was a good sport about trying on. That was like an absolute no. And I think he would have probably gone with it had I been pushy, but I'm not going to do that. I want you to be comfortable as your wedding too. There's no reason for you to just try to please me to the point of not, because then we're doing the same thing. You're doing what I do. So we can't do that.
Well, no, I have gotten better at saying that's something I don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
When the times that you're talking about, a lot of times are where I really don't have much of an opinion on something.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, sure, because I really, I don't have much of an opinion. It's like, okay, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's something you really want to do and I'm not against it, then that's fine. No big deal. So that's where a lot of that comes from.
Mm-hmm.
But in being able to talk these things through with you, and the fact that you do push back on me on those things, it does help to bring my anxiety down, because it's like, no, wait, I can actually say no. I can actually say that's really not something I'm interested in. Or sometimes just say, I don't know if I'm interested in it or not. I just, I don't really have strong opinions on it one way or the other.
Yeah.
And just being able to express that. But that's one of the major things for me, is being able to calmly express what I feel brings my anxiety down. And so that's a big thing for me. Like going back to what I was saying before in terms of uncomfortable conversations,
Mm-hmm.
there are fewer conversations now in my life that I feel are uncomfortable. Whereas before, there were a lot of subject areas where I would get uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And I would end up, accepting something that I shouldn't, or saying yes to things that, I really didn't want to do, whatever the case may be. But being better at having those uncomfortable conversations, and you give me room to have those conversations. And so because of the fact that I know that you're not going to hold it against me, I can have these conversations with you. Mm-hmm. That really decreases my anxiety. So for me, there's anxiety in so many different parts of my life, and I'm working on all of them. I don't know if any of them I've actually solved, but I do feel like I'm on decent footing with most of them.
And one of the ways that my anxiety is lowered is you actually talking to me as much as you're saying that, me giving you that space to do that, you doing that instead of me having to guess what you're thinking, guess what you want, or you not tell me. And then later on, you complain about what I did. Well, if you had told me in the first place what you were thinking or feeling, because then I feel responsible for someone else's happiness.
Right.
So another person saying what they want, need, don't like, whatever, is helpful to me, because then I don't have to figure it out and then deal with how I did it wrong, you know? So I appreciate these conversations. Like, you definitely are a safe space for me, and you definitely bring my anxiety down. And it's very helpful to have a home that's really peaceful. It does lower anxiety. And I think that...
Oh, and by the way, the peace in the home is part of the reason why I say you're wonderful, because we have so much peace here. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes that's why when it's quiet, I'll just say, you're so wonderful.
And let me throw in there, because, there's the saying that, be a man's peace. Like, that's not what I'm doing here. He's being my peace too. Like, you got to be each other's peace.
Absolutely.
The world is loud and noisy for all of us.
Oh, yes.
So it's everyone's job in the home to try to bring as much peace as possible. It's not one person bringing one person peace. Right? Because that right there will cause me anxiety. If my job is just to make sure you're, and what about me? Like, I'm,
right.
You know what I mean? So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So yes, but it is nice to have a peaceful home. I don't think there's times in my life where I did, but there was also a time in my life, where there wasn't any peace at home. And if there was, it was very short lived, and I didn't know when it was going to, go nuts. So that's probably caused me anxiety, and it's a trigger for me to not have peace. And I was alone for so long, right? A single woman, never married, and never lived with anyone other than my mom before. So I'm used to the peace and quiet. So yes, it's a little noisier. There's more movement that was going on, but it's still peaceful.
Yes.
And so that definitely lowers anxiety.
Yeah. And I can't put a price tag on peace. I mean, I think that one of the most powerful things in our relationship is just the peace.
Mm-hmm.
And that is one of the things that I'm not willing to give up.
Right.
Is having that peace. But that peace, as you said, takes both of us.
Mm-hmm.
Takes both of us considering each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I love about it.
Mm-hmm.
I really do.
Yep. And that's a growth area for me, because I think in former relationships there wasn't peace, and I was used to it not being peace, used to being chaos, used to arguing. You felt that was love. That's because we see that a lot, and we think, well, if there's no passion, quote unquote, then it's not love, and you need to be fired up and blah blah blah. And yes, it's okay to have arguments and things like that, but it's still, at the end of the day, the overall feeling should be a peace in your home as much as possible. And I had to get used to being in a relationship where there was peace.
Yeah.
And, at first it caused me anxiety, because I'm thinking, there's not enough going on. There's not is this boring? Do we have anything in common? So I think I'm asking everyone out there to look at their lives, examine, do you have anxiety? What are the areas you have anxiety, and how can you combat that? What are some things that you can do to help lower it, because it is impacting our health.
Absolutely.
It impacts our relationships, our jobs, like motivation, everything, really. And again, there is good anxiety, and we need it. It helps us stay safe sometimes with things, right? We see a car coming, oh my God, what's the worst thing that can happen? Get out of the way, right? It helps you. But if you're living in that with things you have no control over, or every day, then you got to make some changes.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the things that I want to say as we start to wrap up, I would get anxiety before a lot of hard decisions that I had to make.
Mm-hmm.
And I was listening to the Tim Ferriss podcast. This is probably 10, 12 years ago. And he had this thing, if I remember correctly, he called it fear casting. And I loved it. And so what he would say was, before a big decision, ask yourself, what is the absolute worst outcome that can happen? And then ask yourself, how would you recover from that? And as you start going through that, figuring out what's the worst possible outcome, which is probably not going to happen, and you start realizing, well, I'm going to be okay in the worst possible outcome, which will probably not happen, that would bring my anxiety way down. Like when I moved out here to California, I did fear casting because I was like, I want to go to California, and I had to think about what is the worst thing that can happen. Well, the worst thing that can happen is things don't go well, and I end up having to go back to Maryland and be embarrassed. That's not so bad.
Right.
It's like, who cares?
Right.
So that really made me go full steam ahead on this move to California, and I use it a lot, and it really does bring down the anxiety.
That's great. And I'm going to wrap this up with this final thought about that. I love that fear casting. A piece that I've been seeing recently is also to think about what's the best thing that could happen.
Yes.
and give that a lot of weight. And that really helps you with your anxiety. And just be open to growing and being open to thinking about things in in different ways, right? Don't always think about the worst outcome, but actually go through that process and then think about what the best outcome will be. And that will help lower your anxiety tremendously, I think.
Absolutely.
As we, bring this episode to an end, I want to throw this out there to the listeners. Next week's episode will be around narratives. If there's a specific topic you want us to cover, I think we're going to talk about politics. So if there's a specific question you have, topic, something you want us to bring up, something you want to know more about, please leave that in a comment somewhere on one of the platforms, and we'll be looking at that. Or if you want to message me, I know some of you are following me on Instagram and other social media, please feel free to do so there as well. We want to hear from you. We have some ideas about what we're going to talk about, but we want to hear from you as well.
And I also want to hear from you if you disagree with us. Any good faith arguments will be welcome here.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you once again. Don't forget to follow, share, subscribe, like, rate, all that good stuff.
Absolutely.
And we will see you next week. So I am Tiffany and I'm out.
I'm Freddy, and thank you for your time. Take care.